Hare Krishna. Welcome to today's reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are continuing where we left yesterday. Canto 2, Chapter 9, answers by citing the Lord's version. Text 38. Before that, we recite as always Srimad Bhagavatam Mahima Stotra of Sanatana Goswami. Sarva Shastrabhi Piyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhantna Ratnadya, Sarva Lokaika Drikpradam, Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kalidvanto Ditaditya, Shri Krishna Parivartita, Paramananda Patnaya, Prema Vakshaksharayate, Sarvanda Sarvasevyaya, Shri Krishna Namostume, Madhika Bandha Matsangin, Madguru Matmahadana, Manishtaraka Madbhagya, Madananda Namostute, Asadu Sadutadayin, Hatini Chochataraka, Hana Muncha Kadachinmam, Premna Hrit Kantayospuram. Translation. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all of the worlds. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali, you are the exact image of Shri Krishna. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth. My savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, welcome again to today's reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. For the next hour we'll read from the second canto, chapter 9, verse 38 onwards. Translation. Shukadeva Goswami said to Maharaj Parikshit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, after being seen in his transcendental form, instructing Brahmaji, the leader of the living entities, disappeared. Purport. In this verse it is clearly mentioned that the Lord is Ajana, or the Supreme Person, and that he was showing his transcendental form, Atmano Rupam, to Brahmaji, while instructing him in the summarization of Srimad Bhagavatam in 4 verses. He is Ajana, or the Supreme Person, amongst Jananam, or all persons. All living entities are individual persons, and amongst all such persons, Lord Hari is supreme, as confirmed in the Shruti mantra, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanash Chaitananam. So there is no place for impersonal features in the transcendental world, as there are impersonal features in the material world. Whenever there is Chaitana, or knowledge, the personal features comes in. In the spiritual world, everything is full of knowledge, and therefore everything in the transcendental world, the land, the water, the tree, the mountain, the river, the man, the animal, the bird, everything is of the same quality, namely Chaitana, and therefore everything there is individual and personal. Srimad Bhagavatam gives us this information as the supreme Vedic literature, and it was personally instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to Brahmaji, so that the leader of the living entities might broadcast the message to all in the universe in order to teach the supreme knowledge of Bhakti Yoga. Brahmaji in his turn instructed Narada, his beloved son, the same message of Srimad Bhagavatam, and Narada in his turn taught the same to Vyasadeva, who again taught it to Shukadeva Goswami. Through Shukadeva Goswami's grace and by the mercy of Maharaj Parikshit, we are all given Srimad Bhagavatam perpetually to learn the science of the Absolute Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Verse 39. Translation. On the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who is the object of transcendental enjoyment for the senses of devotees, Brahma, with folded hands, began to recreate the universe, full with living entities, as it was previously. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is the object for fulfilling the senses of all living entities. Illusioned by the glaring reflection of the external energy, the living entities worship the senses instead of engaging them properly in fulfilling the desires of the Supreme. In the Hari Bhakti Sudodhaya 13.2, there is the following verse. Akshno phala tvadrisha darshanam hi, tano phalam tvadrisha gatra sangha, jiva phalam tvadrisha kirtanam hi, sudurlabha bhagavata hi loke. O devotee of the Lord, the purpose of the visual sense is fulfilled simply by seeing you, and to touch your body is the fulfillment of bodily touch. The tongue is meant for glorifying your qualities, because in this world a pure devotee of the Lord is very difficult to find. Originally, the senses of the living entity were awarded for this purpose, namely to engage them in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, or that of his devotees. But the conditioned souls, illusioned by the material energy, became captivated by sense enjoyment. Therefore, the whole process of God consciousness is meant to rectify the conditional activities of the senses and to re-engage them in the direct service of the Lord. Lord Brahma thus engaged his senses in the Lord by recreating the conditioned living entities to act in the recreated universe. This material universe is thus created and annihilated by the will of the Lord. It is created to give the conditioned soul a chance to act to return home back to Godhead, and servants like Brahmaji, Naradaji, Vyasaji, and their company become busy with the same purpose of the Lord, to reclaim the conditioned souls from the field of sense gratification and return them to the normal stage of engaging the senses in service of the Lord. Instead of doing so, that is, converting the actions of the senses, the impersonalists began to make the conditioned souls senseless, and the Lord also senseless. That is improper treatment for the conditioned souls. The diseased condition of the senses may be treated by curing the defect, but not uprooting the senses altogether. When there is some disease in the eyes may be cured to see properly. Plucking out the eyes is treatment. Similarly, the whole material disease is based on the process of sense gratification, and liberation from the diseased condition is re-engagement of the senses to see the beauty of the Lord, hear his glories, and act on his account. Thus Brahmaji created the universal activities again. 40. Thus once upon a time, the forefather of living entities and the father of religiousness, Lord Brahma, situated himself in acts of regulative principles, desiring self-interest for the welfare of all living entities. Purport. One cannot be situated in an exalted position without having undertaken a regulative life of rules and regulations. An unrestricted life of sense gratification is animal life, and Lord Brahma, in order to teach all concerned within the jurisdiction of his generations, taught the same principles of sense control for executing higher duties. He desired the welfare of all as servants of God, and anyone desiring the welfare of the members of his family and generations must conduct a moral religious life. The highest life of moral principles is to become a devotee of the Lord, because a pure devotee of the Lord has all the good qualities of the Lord. On the other hand, one who is not a devotee of the Lord, however qualified he may be in the mundane sense of the term, cannot be qualified with any good quality worthy of the name. The pure devotees of the Lord, like Brahma and persons in a chain of disciplic succession, do not do anything to instruct their subordinates without acting accordingly themselves. Text 41. Narada, the most dear of the inheritor sons of Brahma, always ready to serve his father, strictly follows the instructions of his father by his mannerly behavior, meekness, and sense control. 42. Narada very much pleased his father and desired to know all about the energies of Vishnu, the master of all energies. For Narada was the greatest of all sages and greatest of all devotees, O king. Purport. Lord Brahma, being the creator of all living beings in the universe, is originally the father of several well-known sons, like Daksha, the Chatursanas, and Narada. in 3 departments of human knowledge disseminated by the Vedas, namely fruitive work, karma kanda, transcendental knowledge, jnana kanda, and devotional service, upasana kanda, Devarshi Narada inherited from his father Brahma devotional service, whereas Daksha inherited from his father fruitive work, and Sanaka, Sanatana, etc. inherited from their father information about jnana kanda, or transcendental knowledge. But out of them all, Narada is described here as the most beloved son of Brahma because of good behavior, obedience, meekness, and readiness to render service unto the Father. And Narada is famous as the greatest of all sages because of his being the greatest of all devotees. Narada is the spiritual master of many famous devotees of the Lord. He is the spiritual master of Prahlada, Dhruva, and Vyasa, down to the forest animal hunter, Kirata. His only business is to turn everyone to the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Therefore, all these features of Narada make him the dearmost son of his father, and all this is due to Narada's being a first-class devotee of the Lord. The devotees are always anxious to know more and more about the Supreme Lord, the master of all energies. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 10.9, Machita madgata prana bodayantas parasparam katayantas chamam nityam tushanti charamanti cha. The Supreme Lord is unlimited, and his energies are also unlimited. No one can know them completely. Brahmaji, being the greatest living entity within this universe, and being directly instructed by the Lord, must know more than anyone within this universe, although such knowledge may not be complete. Thus it is the duty of everyone to ask about the unlimited Lord from the spiritual master in the disciplic succession of Brahma, which descends from Narada to Vyasa, from Vyasa to Shukadev, and so on. Verse 43. The great sage Narada also inquired in detail from his father Brahma, the great-grandfather of all the universe, after he was well satisfied. The process of understanding spiritual or transcendental knowledge from the realized person is not exactly like asking an ordinary question from the schoolmaster. The schoolmasters in the modern days are paid agents for giving some information, but the spiritual master is not a paid agent, nor can he impart instruction without being authorized. In the Bhagavad Gita 4.34, the process of understanding transcendental knowledge is directed as follows. Tatvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadikshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. Arjuna was advised to receive transcendental knowledge from the realized person by surrender, questions, and service. Receiving transcendental knowledge is not like exchanging dollars. Such exchange has to be received by service to the spiritual master. As Brahmaji received the knowledge directly from the Lord by satisfying him fully, similarly, one has to receive the transcendental knowledge from the spiritual master by satisfying him. The spiritual master's satisfaction is the means of assimilating transcendental knowledge. One cannot understand transcendental knowledge simply by becoming a grammarian. The Vedas declare, Shveta Shvetara Upanishad 6.23, Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tata gurau tasyate katita hyarta prakashante mahatmanaham. Only unto one who has unflinching devotion to the Lord and to the spiritual master does transcendental knowledge become automatically revealed. End quote. Such relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master is eternal. One who is not a disciple is the next spiritual master, and one cannot be a bona fide and authorized spiritual master unless one has been strictly obedient to his spiritual master. Brahmaji, as a disciple of the Supreme Lord, received the real knowledge and imparted it to his dear disciple Narada, and similarly, Narada, as spiritual master, handed over this knowledge to Vyasa, and so on. Therefore, the so-called formal spiritual master and disciple are not facsimiles of Brahma and Narada, or Narada and Vyasa. The relationship between Brahma and Narada is reality, while the so-called formality is the relation between the cheater and cheated. It is clearly mentioned herewith that Narada is not only well-behaved, meek and obedient, but also self-controlled. One who is not self-controlled, specifically in sex life, can become neither a disciple nor a spiritual master. One must have disciplinary training in controlling speaking, anger, the tongue, the mind, the belly, and the genitals. One who has controlled the particular senses mentioned above is called a Goswami. Without becoming a Goswami, one can become neither a disciple nor a spiritual master. That's interesting. First you have to be Goswami to be a disciple. The so-called spiritual master without sense control is certainly the cheater, and the disciple of such a so-called spiritual cheated. One should not think of Brahmaji as a dead great-grandfather, as we have experienced on this planet. He is the oldest great-grandfather, and he is still living, and Narada is also living. The age of the inhabitants of the Brahmaloka planet is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. The inhabitants of this small planet Earth can hardly calculate even a duration of 1 day of Brahma. Text 44. Thereupon the supplementary Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, which was described as the personality of Godhead and which contains 10 characteristics, was told with satisfaction by the to his son Narada. Purport. Although the Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken in 4 verses, it had 10 characteristics, which will be explained in the next chapter. In the 4 verses, it is first said that the Lord existed before the creation, and thus the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam includes the Vedanta aphorism, Janmadi Asya, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1. Janmadi Asya is the beginning, yet the 4 verses in which it is said that the Lord is the root of everything that be, beginning from the creation up to the supreme abode of the Lord, naturally explain the 10 characteristics. One should not misunderstand by wrong interpretations that the Lord spoke only 4 verses and that therefore all the rest of the 17,994 verses are useless. The 10 characteristics, as will be explained in the next chapter, require so many verses just to explain them properly. Brahmaji had also advised Narada previously that he should expand the idea he had heard from Brahmaji. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed this to Srila Rupa Goswami in a nutshell, but the disciple Rupa Goswami expanded this very elaborately, and the same subject was further expanded by Jiva Goswami and even further by Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur. We are just trying to follow all these authorities. So Srimad Bhagavatam is not like ordinary fiction or mundane literature. It is unlimited in strength, and however one may expand it according to one's own ability, Bhagavatam still cannot be finished by such expansion. Srimad Bhagavatam, being the sound representation of the Lord, is simultaneously explained in 4 verses and in 4 billion verses, all the same, inasmuch as the Lord is smaller than the atom and bigger than the unlimited sky. Such is the potency of Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 45. In succession, O King, the great sage Narada instructed Srimad Bhagavatam unto the unlimitedly powerful Vyasadeva, who meditated in devotional service upon the personality of Godhead, the absolute truth, on the bank of the river Saraswati. Purport. In the 5th chapter of the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada instructed this Atto Maha Bhagavan Amokya Drik Shrava Satyarato Dritavrataha Urukrama Syakila Bandha Muktaye Samadina Nusmara Tatvicheshtam. O greatly fortunate, pious philosopher, your name and fame are universal, and you are fixed in the absolute truth with spotless character and infallible vision. I ask you to meditate upon the activities of the personality of Godhead, whose activities are unparalleled. End quote. So, in the disciplic succession of the Brahma Sampradaya, the practice of yoga meditation is not neglected, but because the devotees are bhakti yogis, they do not undertake the trouble to meditate upon the impersonal Brahman. As indicated here, they meditate on Brahma Paramam, or the Supreme Brahman. Brahman realization begins from the impersonal effulgence, but by further progress of such meditation, manifestation of the Supreme Soul, Paramatma realization, takes place. And progressing further, realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is fixed. Sri Narada Muni as the spiritual master of Vyasadeva, knew very well the position of Vyasadeva, and thus he certified the qualities of Srila Vyasadeva and as fixed in the absolute truth with great vow, etc. Narada advised meditation upon the transcendental activities of the Lord. Impersonal Brahman has no activities, but the personality of Godhead has many activities, and all such activities are transcendental, without any tinge of material quality. If the activities of the Supreme Brahman were material activities, then Narada would not have advised Vyasadeva to meditate upon them. And the Param Brahma is Lord Sri Krishna, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. In the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna realized the factual position of Lord Krishna, he addressed Lord Krishna in the following words: Param Brahma Param Dhamma Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adidevam Ajam Vibhum Ahutvam Rishaya Sarve Deva Rishi Naradastata Asito Devalo Vyasa Swayam Chaiva Bravishime. Arjuna summarized the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita by his realization of Lord Sri Krishna and thus said, My dear personality of Godhead, you are the supreme absolute truth, the original person in the eternal form of bliss and knowledge. And this is confirmed by Narada, Asita, Devala and Vyasadeva, and above all, your personal self has also confirmed it. This is Bhagavad Gita 10, 12 and 13. When Vyasadeva fixed his mind in meditation, he did it in Bhakti Yoga trance and actually saw the Supreme Person with Maya, the illusory energy, in contraposition. As we have discussed before, the Lord's Maya, or illusion, is also a representation because Maya has no existence without the Lord. Darkness is not independent of light. Without light, no one can experience the contraposition of darkness. However, this Maya or illusion cannot overcome the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but stands apart from Him, apashrayam. Therefore, perfection of meditation is realization of the Personality of Godhead along with His transcendental activities. Meditation on the impersonal Brahman is a troublesome business for the meditator, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 12.5. Klesho dikataras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam. Text 46. O King, your questions as to how the universe became manifested from the gigantic form of the Personality of Godhead, as well as other questions, I shall answer in detail by explanation of the 4 verses already mentioned. Purport. As stated in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this great transcendental literature is the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge, and therefore all questions that can be humanly possible regarding the universal affairs, beginning from its creation, are all answered in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The answers depend only on the qualification of the person who explains them. The 10 divisions of Srimad Bhagavatam, as explained by the great speaker Srila Shukadeva Goswami, are the limitation of all questions, and intelligent persons will derive all intellectual benefits from them by proper utilization. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 2nd canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Citing the Lord's Version. So we are starting. You can have a book if you wanna. We have more.
Have you done the chants yet?
Sorry?
What was it at 6:30? There was the chanting for the Hare Rama. That's fine.
Oh no, we don't do Koranarti. We do reading Bhagavatam today. Yeah. So we're starting now chapter 10 of the 2nd canto. Chapter is entitled Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. So text 1. Got it? It's part 3. Translation. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, sub-creation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of Manus, the science of God, returning home back to Godhead, liberation, and the summum bonum. Okay, so text 2. To isolate the transcendence of the summum bonum, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic inference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summarily explanation given by the great sages. Text 3. The elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements, fire, water, land, air, and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind, is known as sarga, whereas subsequent resultant interaction of the modes of material nature is called visarga. Purport. In order to explain the 10 divisional symptoms of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 7 continuous verses. The first of these, under reference, pertains to the 16 elementary manifestations of earth, water, etc., with material ego composed of material intelligence and mind. The subsequent creation is a result of the reactions of the above-mentioned 16 energies of the first Purusha, the Mahavishnu incarnation of Govinda, as later explained by Brahma in his treatise Brahma Samhita as follows. Yat karana nava jale bhajati smayoga nidra mananta jagatande saroma kupaha adara shaktim avalambhya swamurtim Purusham tamaham bhajami. The first Purusha incarnation of Govinda, Lord Krishna, known as the Mahavishnu, goes into a yoga nidra mystic sleep, and the innumerable universes are situated in potency in each and every hair hole of his transcendental body. As mentioned in the previous verse, Shrutena, or with reference to the Vedic conclusions, the creation is possible from the personality of God directly by manifestation of his particular energies. In Vedic reference, the creation appears to be a product of material nature. This conclusion comes from a profound of knowledge. From Vedic reference, it is concluded energies, namely internal, external, and marginal, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As explained hereinbefore, the illusory conclusion is that creation is made by the immaterial nature. The Vedic conclusion is transcendental, whereas the non-Vedic conclusion is material darkness. The internal potency of the Supreme Lord is identical with the Supreme Lord, and the external potency is enlivened in contact with the internal potency. The parts and parcels of the internal potency which react in contact with the external potency are called the marginal potency of the living entities. Thus the original creation is directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Param Brahman, and the secondary creation, as a reactionary result of the original ingredients, is made by Brahma. Thus the activities of the whole universe are started. So I will ask now Jivana.
Just flick it up your finger, yeah.
If you want to use this?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more bright, yeah. You just go like this. Keep it. Okay. Just for 7 5.
You let's put this on.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, what are we text?
4.
It's full. Text 4, translation. The right situation for the living entities is to obey the laws of the Lord and thus be in perfect peace of mind under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Manus and their laws are meant to give right direction in. The impetus for this activity is the desire for fruitive work. Purport. This material is created, maintained for some time, and again annihilated by the will of the Lord. The creation and the subordinate creator, Brahma, are first created by Lord Vishnu, first and second incarnations. The first Purusa incarnation is Mahavishnu, and the second Purusa incarnation is the Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, from whom Brahma is created. The third Purusha avatar is the Kirodakshayi Vishnu, who lives as the supersoul of everything in the universe and maintains the creation generated by Brahma. Shiva is one of the many sons of Brahma, and he annihilates the creation. Therefore, the original creator of the universe is Vishnu, and he is also the maintainer of the created beings by his causeless mercy. As such, it is the duty of all conditioned souls to acknowledge the victory of the Lord and thus become pure devotees and live peacefully in this world, where miseries and dangers are always in existence. The conditioned souls who take this material creation as the place of satisfaction for the senses, and thus are illusioned by the external energy of Vishnu, remain again to be subjugated by the laws of material nature, creation and destruction. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that beginning from the topmost planet of this universe down to the planet, Patala Loka, all are destructible, and the conditioned souls may travel in space, either by good or bad work or by modern space. But they are sure to die everywhere, although the duration of life in different planets is different. The only means to attain eternal life is to go back home, back to Godhead, where there is no more rebirth as in the material planets. The conditioned souls, being unaware of this very simple fact, because of forgetting their relationship with the Lord of Vaikuntha, try to plan out a permanent life in this material world. Being illusioned by the external energy, they thus become engaged in various types of economic and religious development, forgetting that they are meant for going back home, back to Godhead. This forgetfulness is so strong due to the influence of Maya that the conditioned souls do not at all want to go back to Godhead. By sense enjoyment, they become victims of birth and death repeatedly, and thus spoil human life chances for going back to Vishnu. The directive scriptures made by the Manus in different ages and millenniums are called Sad Dharma, good guidance for the human beings who should take advantage of all the revealed scriptures for their own interest to make life successful termination. The creation is not false, but it is a temporary manifestation just to give a chance for the conditioned souls to go back to Godhead. The desire to go back to Godhead and the functions performed in that direction form the right path of work. When such a regulated path is accepted, the Lord gives all protection to his devotees by his causeless mercy, while the non-devotees risk their own activities to bind themselves in a chain of fruitive actions. The word Saddharma is significant in this connection. Saddharma, or duty performed for going back to Godhead and thus becoming his unalloyed devotee, is the only pious activity. All others may pretend to be pious, but actually they are not. It is for this reason only that the Lord advises in the Bhagavad Gita that one give up all so-called religious activities and completely engage in the devotional service of the Lord to become free from all anxieties due to the dangerous life of material existence. To work situated in Saddharma is the right direction of life. One's aim of life should be to go back home, back to Godhead, and not be subjected to repeated births and deaths in this material world by getting good or bad bodies for the temporary existence. The intelligence of youth, and one should desire the activities in that. Text 5. Translation. The science of God describes the incarnations of the personality of Godhead and his different activities together with the activities of his great devotees. Purport. During the course of the existence of the cosmic manifestation, chronologically created, recording the activities of the living entities. People have a tendency to learn the history and narrations of different men and times, but due to a lack of knowledge in the science of Godhead, they are not apt to study of the incarnation. Be remembered that material creation is created for the salvation of the conditioned souls. The merciful Lord, causeless mercy, various planets in the material world and acts for the salvation of the conditioned souls. That makes the history and narrations worth reading. Srimad Bhagavatam offers such transcendental topics of the Lord in relationship with great devotees. Therefore the topics of the devotees and the Lord are to be given respectful oral reception. Text 6. Translation. The merging of the living entity along with the conditional living tendency with the mystical lying down of the Mahavishnu called the winding up of the cosmic manifestation. Is the permanent situation of the form of the living entity after he gives up the changeable gross and subtle bodies. Purport. As we have discussed several times, there are two types of living entities. Most of them are ever liberated, or nitya muktas, while some of them are ever conditioned. The ever conditioned souls are apt to develop a mentality of lording over the material nature. The material cosmic creation is manifested to give the ever conditioned souls two kinds of facilities. One facility is that the conditioned soul can act according to his tendency to lord over the cosmic manifestation, and the other facility gives the conditioned soul a chance to come back to Godhead. So, after the winding up of the cosmic manifestation, most of the conditioned souls merge into the existence of the Mahavishnu, personality of Godhead, lying in his mystic slumber, to be created again in the next creation. But some of the conditioned souls, who follow the transcendental sound in the form of Vedic literatures, are thus able to go back to Godhead, attain spiritual and original bodies, after quitting the conditioned gross and subtle material bodies. The material conditioned bodies develop out of the living entity's forgetfulness of their relationship with Godhead, and during the course of the cosmic manifestation, the conditioned souls are given a chance to revive their original status of life with the help of the revealed scriptures, so mercifully compile different incarnations. Reading or hearing of such transcendental literatures helps one become liberated, even in the conditioned state of material existence. All the Vedic literatures aim at devotional service to the personality of Godhead, and as soon as one is fixed upon this point, he at once becomes liberated from the conditional life. The material, gross and subtle forms are simply due to conditional soul's ignorance, and as soon as he is fixed in devotional service of the Lord, he becomes eligible to be freed from the conditional state. This devotional service is transcendental attraction for the Supreme on account of his being the source of all pleasing humours. Everyone is after some pleasure, of humour for enjoyment, but does not know the Supreme source of all attraction. Raso vasa rasam hai evayam labhavanandi bhavati. The Vedic hymns inform everyone about the supreme source of all pleasure. The unlimited fountainhead of the pleasure is the personality of Godhead, and one who is fortunate enough to get this information through transcendental literatures like the Srimad Bhagavatam becomes permanently liberated to occupy the proper place in the kingdom of God. Verse number 7, translation. The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being or the Supreme Soul, is the supreme source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus he is the supreme fountainhead, the absolute truth. Purport. Synonyms for the supreme source of all energies, as explained in the very beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, are Janmadi Asya Yata, Vedanti Tat Tattva Vedas Tattvam Ja Ganam Avidyam, Brahmati Paramatmiti Bhagavanditi Sabhyate, called Parabrahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. The word iti used here in this verse completes the synonyms and thus indicates Bhagavan. This will be explained further in the later verses. But this Bhagavan ultimately means Lord Krishna, because the Srimad Bhagavatam has already accepted the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Krishna. Krishna tu Bhagavan Swayam. The original source of all energies, or the Sanam Bonam, is the absolute truth, which is called Para Brahma, etc. And Bhagavan is the last word of the absolute truth. But even with the synonyms for Bhagavan, such as Narayana, Vishnu and Purusha, the last word is Krishna, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Savasya Sarman Pravatati, etc. Besides that, the Srimad Bhagavatam represents Krishna as the sound incarnation of the Lord. Krishna Swadharma Pakate Dharma Gana Dibe Saha Kalunasta Drishyam Isa Purana. Thus, by general conclusion, Lord Krishna is the ultimate source of all energies, and the means that. And to explain Krishna, or the science of Krishna, the Srimad Bhagavatam has been prepared. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, this truth is indicated in the questions and answers by Sutta Goswami and great sages like Shaunaka. And in the first and second chapters of the canto, this is explained. In the third, this subject is more explicit, and in the fourth chapter, even more explicit. In the second canto, the absolute truth as the personality of Godhead is further emphasized, and the indication of the Supreme Lord Krishna. The summary of Srimad Bhagavatam in 4 verses, as we have already discussed, is succinct. This Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate issue, is confirmed by Brahma in his Brahma Samhita as Ishvara Parama Krishna Saksidananda Vigraha. So, it is concluded in the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The complete subject is elaborately explained in the 10th and 11th cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the matter of the changes of the Manvantaris, such as Swayambhurva Manvantari and Chakshusa Manvantari, and they are discussed in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Krishna is indicated. In the 8th canto, the Vishvavata Manvantari explains the same subject indirectly, and in the 9th canto, the same purport is there. In the 12th canto, the same is further explained, specifically regarding the different incarnations of the Lord. Thus, it is concluded by studying the complete Srimad Bhagavatam that Lord Sri Krishna is the ultimate sun and bonum, or the ultimate source of all energy. And according to the grades of worshippers, the indications of the nomenclature may be differently explained as Narayana, Brahma and Paramatma. Text 8. Translation. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Atmika person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adidevaka. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adibhautika person. Purport. The supreme controlling sun and bonum is the personality of Godhead in his plenary portion as Paramatma, or the supersoul manifestation. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.42, it is said, Atarva bahuna tena kim gratena tarvajuna vitishbayaham idam krishnam ekishena statu jagat. All the controlling deities like Vishnu, Brahma and Shiva are different manifestations of the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, who in such manners by entering into each and every universe generated from him. But still, apparently there are divisions of the controller and controlled. For example, food controlling department, the control of food is a person made of the same ingredients as the person who is controlled. Similarly, each and every individual in the material world is controlled by the higher demigods. For example, we have senses, but the senses by superior controlling we cannot see without any controller of the light as the sun. The sun is the planet, and human beings on this earth are all controlled by the sun god as far as our eyes are concerned. Similarly, all the senses we have are controlled by the superior demigods, who are also as much living entities as we are, but one is empowered while the other is controlled. The controlled living entity is called the Adhyatmika person, and the controller is called the Adidevaka person. All these positions in the material world are due to different creative activities. Any individual living being can become the sun god, or even Brahma, or other god in the upper systems by a higher grade of pious work. And similarly, one becomes controlled by the higher demigods by lower grades of fruitive activities. So, every individual living entity is subject to the supreme control of the Paramatma, who puts everyone in different positions of the controller and the controlled. That which distinguishes the controller and the controlled, i.e. the material body, is called Adibhautika, Purusha. The body is sometimes called Purusha, or confirmed in the following hymn, Sa va essa Puruso na Rasamaya. The body is called the Anarasa embodiment. This body depends on food. The living entity, which is embodied, does not eat anything, however, because the owner is spirit in essence. The material body requires replacement of matter for the wearing and tearing of the mechanical body. Therefore, the distinction between the individual living entity and the controlling planetary deities is in the Ana-Rasamaya body. The sun may have a gigantic body, and a man may have a smaller body, but all these visible bodies are made of matter. Nonetheless, the sun god and the individual person, who are related as the controller and the controlled, are of the same spiritual parts and parcels of the Supreme Being, and it is the Supreme Being who places different parts and parcels in different positions, and thus the conclusion is that the Supreme Person is the shelter of all. Text 9. All three of the above-mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood, but the Supreme Being, who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter, is independent of all, and therefore he is the supreme shelter. Purport. There are innumerable living entities, one dependent on the other in the relationship of the controlled and the controller. But without the medium of perception, no one can know or understand who is controlled and who is the controller. For example, the sun controls the power of our body because we have eyes. Without her having eyes, the sunlight is useless, and without sunlight, the eyes are useless. Thus they are interdependent, and none of them is independent. Therefore, the natural question arises concerning who made them interdependent. The one who has made such a relationship of interdependence must be ultimately completely independent. As stated in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the ultimate source of all interdependent objectives is the complete independent subject. This ultimate source of all interdependence is the Supreme Truth or Paramatma, the Super Soul, who is not dependent on anything else. He is Swasharaya Sharaya. He is the only dependent on himself, and thus he is the supreme shelter of everyone, or everything. Although Paramatma and Brahma are subordinate to Bhagavan, because Bhagavan is Purushottama, or the Supreme Person, he is the source of the Super Soul also. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that he is the Purushottama, and the source of everything, and thus it is concluded that Sri Krishna is the source and including the Super Soul and the Supreme Brahman. Even accepting that there is no difference between the Super Soul and the individual soul is on the Super Soul for being liberated from the illusion of material. The individual is under the clutches of illusory energy, and therefore, although qualitatively one with the Super Soul, he is under the illusion of identifying himself with matter. And to get out of this illusionary conception of factual life, the individual soul has to depend on the Super Soul to be recognized as one with him. In that sense, also, the Super Soul is the supreme shelter, and there is no doubt about it. The individual living entity, the Jiva, is always dependent on the Super Soul, Paramatma, because the individual soul forgets his spiritual identity, whereas the Super Soul, Paramatma, does not forget his transcendental position. In the Bhagavad Gita, these separate positions of the Jiva Atma and the Paramatma are specifically mentioned. In the 4th chapter, Arjuna, the Jiva soul, is represented as forgetful of his many previous births. But the Lord, the Super Soul, is not forgetful. The Lord even remembers when he taught the Bhagavad Gita to the sun god billions of years before. The Lord can remember such millions and billions of years, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita follows: Vedaham samatitani vatamanani chajuna bhavishyane che bhutani mam tavadhana kaschana. The Lord, in his internal blissful body of knowledge, is aware of all that happened in the past, that which is going on in the present, and also what will happen in the future. But in spite of his being the shelter of both the Paramatma and Brahma, persons with a poor fund of knowledge are unable to understand him as he is. The propaganda of the identity of the cosmic consciousness with the consciousness of the individual living entities is completely misleading, because every such person or individual soul as Arjuna could not remember his past deeds, although he is always with the Lord. And what can the tiny ordinary man, falsely claiming to be one with the cosmic consciousness, know about his past, present and future? Text number 10. After separating the different universes, the gigantic universe of the Lord, Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, into universes, desiring to lie on the created Jabadaka. Purport. After the analysis of the living entities and the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, the independent source of all other living beings, Srila Shukadeva Goswami is now presenting the prime necessity for devotional service to the Lord, which is the only occupational business of all living entities. The Supreme Lord and his plenary portions and extensions of plenary portions are non-different from one another, and thus the supreme independence is in each and every one of them. In order to prove this, Shukadeva Goswami, as promised to King Parikshit, describes herein the independence of the Purusha avatar personality of Godhead. even in the sphere of the material creation. Such activities of the Lord are also transcendental, and therefore they are also Leela, or pastimes, of the Absolute Lord. Such pastimes of the Lord are very conducive to the hearers for self-realization in the field of devotional service. Some may argue, not then relish the transcendental leader of the Lord as exhibited in the land of Mathura or Vrindavan, which are sweeter than everything in the world. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur replies that the pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan are meant to be realized or relished by advanced devotees of the Lord. Neophytes understand such transcendental activities of the Lord. The Lord's pastimes in the material sphere related to creation, maintenance and destruction are verily relishable by the Prakrita, or mundane devotees of the Lord. As the yoga system, mainly based on bodily exercises, is meant for the person who is too much attached to the bodily conception of existence, similarly, the Lord's pastimes related to the creation and destruction of the material world are for those who are too materially attached. For such mundane creatures, the functions of the body and the functions of the cosmic world through physical laws in relationship with the Lord are also therefore included in the understanding of the lawmaker, the personality of Godhead. The scientists explain the material functions by so many technological terms of material law. The Srimad Bhagavatam points out that we should not be amazed by the mechanical arrangement of the complicated engine of dynamo. One should praise the engineer who creates such a machine. That is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. Devotees are always full with praise of the Lord, physical laws. In the Bhagavad Gita 9.10, the direction of the Lord upon the material nature is described as follows: Maya chikshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam etunenena kuntaya jagat vibharvavatiti. The material nature, full of physical laws, is one of my different energies. Therefore it is neither independent nor blind. Because I am transcendently all-powerful, simply by my glancing over material nature, the physical laws of nature work so wonderfully. The actions and reactions of the physical laws work on that account, and thus the material world is created, maintained, and annihilated again and again. Men with a forefront of knowledge, however, become astonished by studying the physical laws both within the construction of the individual body and within the cosmic manifestation, and foolishly they decry the existence of God, taking it for granted that the physical laws are independent, without any metaphysical control. The Bhagavad Gita 9.11 replies to this foolishness in the following words: Avijanate mamudha manusam tanamashritam parabhavam ajanatu mambuta maeshvaram. The foolish men, madhu, who do not know the personality of Godhead in his eternal form of bliss and knowledge. The foolish man thinks of the transcendental body of the Lord as something like his own, and therefore he cannot think of the unlimited controlling power of the Lord, who is not visible in the acting of the physical laws. The Lord is, however, visible to the naked eyes of the people in general. When he descends himself by his own personal potency, Lord Krishna incarnated himself as he is, and played very wonderful parts as the Lord himself, and the Bhagavad Gita concerns such wonderful actions and knowledge. Yet foolish men will not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Generally, they consider the infinitesimal and infinite features of the Lord because they themselves are unable to become either the infinitesimal or the infinite. But one should know that the infinite and the infinitesimal sides of the Lord are not his highest glories. The most wonderful manifestation of the Lord's power is exhibited when the infinite Lord becomes visible to our eyes as one of us. Yet his activities are non-different from those of the finite beings. Lifting a mountain at the age of 7 years and marrying 16,000 wives in the prime of his youth are some of the examples of his infinite energy. But the fools, mudhas, after seeing them or hearing about them, decry them as legendary and take the Lord as one of them. They cannot understand that Lord Sri Krishna, although in the form of a human being, by his own potency, is still the Supreme Lord, with full potency as the Supreme Controller. When, however, the mudras give submission and oral reception to the message of the Lord, as in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, through the chain of disciplic succession, such mudras also become devotees of the Lord by the grace of his pure devotees. And for this reason only either in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastimes of the Lord in the material world are delineated for the benefit of those with a poor fund of knowledge. Text number 11, translation. That Supreme Person is not impersonal, and therefore is distinctively a Nara or person. Therefore, the transcendental water created from the Supreme Nara is known as Nara, and because he lies down on the water, he is known as Narayana. Text 12. Translation. One should definitely know that all material ingredients, activities, time and modes, and the living entities who are meant to enjoy them all, exist by his mercy only, and as soon as he does not care for them, everything becomes non-existent. Purport. The living entities are the enjoyers of the material ingredients, time, modes, etc., because they want to lord over the material nature. The Lord is the supreme enjoyer, and the living entities are meant to assist the Lord in his enjoyment and participate in the transcendental enjoyment of everyone. The enjoyed both participate in enjoyment, but deluded by the illusionary energy, the living entities want to become the enjoyer like the Lord, although they are not meant for such enjoyment. The jivas, the living entities, are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita as the Lord's superior nature, or para prakriti, and so also it is mentioned in the Vishnu Purana. Therefore, the living entities are never the purusas or the factual enjoyers. As such, the spirit of enjoyment by the living entity in the material world is false. In the spiritual world, the living entities are pure in nature, and therefore they are associates in the enjoyment of the Supreme Lord. In the material world, the spirit of enjoyment of the living entities, by dint of their own actions, karma, gradually fades by the laws of nature, and thus the illusory energy dictates in the ears of the conditioned souls that they should become one with the Lord. This is the last snare of the illusionary energy. When the last illusion is also cleared off by the mercy of the Lord, the living entity again becomes reinstated in his original position and thus becomes actually liberated. For this attainment of liberation from the material clutches, the Lord creates the material world, maintains it for some time, 1,000 years of his measurement as stated in the previous verse, and then again annihilates it by his will. The living entities are therefore completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord, and all their so-called enjoyments by scientific improvement are crushed into dust when the Lord desires. That's it, yeah? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Come again tomorrow.